Alright, it has finally arrived, my cast complete Fungineers box. Already impressed right out of the box. This thing looks great. Usually when you get casted things you think porous, but no, this thing is as smooth as a baby's butt. Really, really nice. 2-pin charge port, I already took care of that, so when this is built that'll be ready to go. Love the clear lid, you can see inside, that is awesome. And then the Thor 300. I was glad to see that it came with lots of extra screws. Came with a couple neat little stickers too. Thor 300. Alright, enough show and tell. Let's start building this thing. Got to make sure to have all the right stuff when building the board. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop these rails on so we can get some measuring done. Make sure stuff's going to fit correctly. Take a couple of those bolts from the packages that they provided. And the threads are the same as your bang bumper screws, so all that stuff's still very compatible. And the box does fit perfectly on these old XR rails. Looks like the supervisor is going to show up here and make sure that this is being done correctly. Another final round of QC here. Alright, so here's a problem with your XR foot pad in the Fungineers box. This yellow cable's not long enough. You're going to have to extend it. You have no choice if you want to use your stock XR pads. But at the time of making this video, they didn't have a complete pad, but now they do. So you can actually just buy the Fungineers one. It's nice concave. It's already got the window built in for the LEDs. That would probably be the easiest route to go instead of what I'm about to do. So if you're not interested in modifying your XR foot pad, skip ahead. All I did was take a razor blade just to clean off the top layer of plastic here, and then you can use something to heat it out. I just used a razor blade, picked it out flawlessly. That way half of it would stay glued in and the piece I wanted exposed would just be exposed. And then of course I extended that connector. I'm going to temporarily mount this foot pad on so we can flip it over and make some measurements on where we're going to modify this thing. Now there's two places where the mud flaps screw down to, and they're actually a good identifying area of where that LED is on the side we can no longer see. So I'm going to make a couple marks right at those two little screw holes and then I'll kind of know where to route out the slot for the window for the LEDs to be seen. And I'll just kind of just quickly just trace around the whole shape of the box right here. That way we'll know what this is looking like when we take it back off. On this side I'm just going to write M so I don't route the wrong way for the foot pad cable. And right here I'm just going to make kind of like a little space of where that barrel plug has to sit so I know where the wires kind of got to dip in. Figure it'll go in just like that. And I'm gonna measure to see how far in on the box the LED starts so I don't make this slot any wider than I need it. I had to be careful when I was measuring out for where the slot's going to go to make sure that there's enough room for the sensor pad wires to go back in and make an abrupt right angle to where they're going to come out but not be right where the window's going to be. Just kind of color in the spot where that slot's going to end up going. And I'm just plugging the wire back in to check to make sure that the wires will actually be able to come around that dark spot without crossing right into it. It's really close. And then I'm going to draw a line for the channel I'm going to make to tuck this wire into the board. That way when I'm done, all of this is perfectly flat on the bottom. Little trick here I'm going to do is I'm going to clip these on, and this piece of wood is going to act as a fence for my little mini router. I'm going to pretend like I know how to use this tool real quick, and then we'll start routing this thing out. Well, clamping and routing stuff out, you know, this is definitely always best done on a tempered glass outdoor table, you know. Live on the dangerous side here. Yeah, that's good enough. Then I'm just going to use this little mini router to channel this thing out, and the nice thing is where that sensor came out, there's a good spot to kind of just get started to put the bit down a little bit. That way if you mess up the first pass, you haven't gone all the way through the whole board yet. I'm just going to double check. Definitely double check. Measure twice, cut once. Is that what they say? Let the fun begin. Let's burn some shit up. First pass, I'm kind of just getting that slot right where I need it, and if it's good, then I'll keep on making the router go down lower until finally I go all the way through the grip tape. In hindsight, this would have been a lot easier to actually have not had the grip tape on there, but I didn't have an extra piece of grip tape, and I wasn't going to ruin the piece I had for the moment because I was too lazy to wait for another one to show up in the mail. But down the road, it'll get changed out. Grip tape doesn't last that long. Okay, now that that slot's been routed out and I made the channel for the wire, managed not to break the table. I think it came out rather good. And if you're wondering, am I going through the velostat in this location? I'm not, because the velostat doesn't start until above the connector. So there's really nothing there. It's just blank space. But I can see the LEDs through the slot, so this worked out just fine. It's perfect. I 3D printed these little shorty fenders. They're kind of go with it to complete the package. Just going to use a little glue here to just kind of tack this wire in place until I can pour in the epoxy for it. So here I had to pull back the grip tape a little bit, clean the edges up where it goes through the plastic sheet that sits on the top, and then I'm going to put a piece of tape across this to seal it, so when I pour in the epoxy it'll hopefully stay in there. Anybody repeating this, do this with your grip tape off and then use like a serious piece of packaging tape that actually has got good stick. That tape did not work very well. Ended up making a mess. But everything turned out fine in the end. So after some clear epoxy I mixed up. In hindsight, I would have used maybe 10-minute epoxy or something. This stuff was just painfully slow to cure. So I would recommend a faster setting epoxy. Unless you like watching paint dry, this stuff will work just fine for that. I'm just going to fill that in, fill in the wire channel, and that will hopefully accomplish what I need it to do. Sorry for having my old bald head so much in the shot. That's horrible. Okay, while that foot pad's securing the epoxy, I'm going to go ahead and put this harness I made. It's got the XT30 and your XT60, and then 4 of the 13 wires I put some pins on for the rear LEDs. You really only need 3, but I just did all 4. This is some great cable. I think it's float grinder cable. I got it from the board shop, but this is perfect for a DIY project. I found a little pin out so I know how to wire those wires I sent to the back. Definitely made sure to tidy up everything. Zip ties, don't want nothing coming loose. And then for these that are going to go into the connector, I'm just going to make sure to put some shrink wrap on those. I don't want those shorting out or they'll do some weird things with the LEDs. Go ahead and snap this little LED back in place. The nice thing is when you buy the complete battery now, you won't have to do all those breaks you're seeing me do. You know, this is just for people that want to really just, you know, do that extra, more, you know, extra DIY, I guess. But you literally can just go to the website these days, get a complete box, complete battery, snap it together in a few minutes and not have to do all this. Oh, and you can get a complete foot pad, you know, with the window already there. I kind of started this project just a little ahead of all that stuff, so, and I didn't want to wait for a battery. This thing's expensive by the time it's done, so I'm going to make sure I have an air tag in here so that way if someone steals it I can pretty much find them and murder them and get my board back. I'm just going to pop a little hole in here so I can get threads of a little screw through it, and then I'm going to chase it with a bigger bit so I can get that screw all the way down there but not go all the way through. There's 4 holes tapped in the bottom of the box for a battery holder. Since I'm not adding a split pack to this, I'm just going to go ahead and use one of those spots to retain this air tag holder. Make sure it's good and tight. I'm going to take a whole bunch of this contact cement and I'm going to fill in the whole well of this air tag holder. I want to make sure this thing's glued down super duper tight. I don't want it coming loose and then hopping on the controller, shorting it out, and then causing me to crash. Nobody wants that. Don't want loose parts floating around in there. I'm going to sand the back of the plastic, get it really rough so there's lots of grip for the glue to adhere to. Just going to dump it in the pool, let it dry, and that ain't going to go anywhere. And it still leaves me the ability to change out the battery once a year. Well, this is the most I can do with this for right now. So we're going to put this gasket back on. We're going to throw the lid on. Snug down all the screws. Make sure not to over tighten these. The lid will warp a little bit if you try to over tighten. That's not a good idea. A good snug is just fine for these. There will be a better view of the foot pad I did in part 3 along with the battery that I'm getting from the board garage. That is pretty exciting. And we're gonna do a complete finish of the whole build. So once the battery box is built, the whole board's going together. Definitely want to thank you all for watching.